You've been taught to be a good man. But what does good truly mean for you? Is it to be agreeable, especially to her? To prioritize her needs and emotions over your own? Do you live dictated by the fear of disapproval? When her voice rises, do you retreat? When her affection withdraws, do you panic, begging for attention? You've been trained, like a dog seeking a pat. Nietzsche warned, the weak are more likely to moralize their submission as goodness. Is your goodness genuine virtue, or a disguise for fear of loneliness, rejection, not being enough? Reflect, have you sacrificed parts of your identity, passion, and purpose for a mere nod of approval? Have you reshaped yourself to fit her expectations, to be less threatening, less masculine, less you? What did you gain? Often, only disrespect. By selling your essence for fleeting warmth, you taught that your value is negotiable. How many times have you found yourself crawling, begging for an illusory peace that costs your soul? Have you traded your will to power, your intrinsic strength, for temporary comfort? When she tired of you, discarded or betrayed you, did you feel the addictive urge to return? Is it love or dependence on familiar pain? Without a backbone of your own values, even cruel pain can become your only recognized attachment. What if there was a different path? What if there was a man who doesn't bend? Imagine she tries to destabilize you with silence, withdrawn affection, emotional drama, and he simply remains. He doesn't yield, doesn't negotiate principles for a smile, doesn't play her game. Have you met such a man? Are you that man? He's not a physical danger. What she fears in him is his immunity, his radical independence. He's not programmable, not dependent, not hungry for her attention. He doesn't orbit her moods like a lifeless satellite. He's outside the control matrix she learned to manipulate. That society imposed on you, Nietzsche stated. The higher man is distinguished from the lower by his fearlessness in facing the abyss. Are you ready to face your own abyss? The abyss of rejection, abandonment, unrequited love, without begging, without crumbling. He doesn't fear solitude because he was forged by loss, not destroyed by it. For him, solitude isn't a prison, but a fortress where his will to power strengthens. Do you tolerate disrespect? Think of the last time you swallowed a bitter pill, accepted less than you deserved, just to keep the peace. This man, this Bermentian training, does not tolerate. He doesn't chase, plead, or bargain for attention that comes with a leash. He is the sovereign of his own soul, the architect of his own worth. Do you feel the tremor this causes in her? It's the tremor of seeing a man who cannot be possessed, a man who is self-sufficient. Society sells us a lie, and you've been a loyal buyer. It says most men are managed. Unknowingly, you accept this. You're useful while compliant, praised while submissive, and replaced the instant you dare to question. Why serve this dynamic? You've been conditioned to seek affection like air, to interpret external validation as proof of existence. But Nietzsche warned, he who does not have the strength to be alone will always be a slave. Are you a slave disguised as a lover? Have you surrendered your vision, principles, time, and voice to buy illusory peace? It might seem to work for a while. She smiles, calms, opens up, but don't be fooled. It's a velvet trap, an invisible contract. Remain predictable, agreeable, malleable. The moment you voice a truth that challenges her, the contract is revoked. What do? Most men, terrified of emotional exile, retreat to the cage. But the man who rises doesn't fear exile. He's been there. He found truth's freedom, even if solitary, infinitely superior to the slavery of self-betrayal disguised as love. He doesn't shrink for her comfort, lie for praise, or dilute himself for acceptance. He seeks the integrity of his own will, not acceptance. This makes him uncomfortable for her. Why? Because she loses control. She can't dictate the pace with silence, invoke his attention by denying her body, or bend his posture with guilt or drama. For the first time, she faces a man who sees her but is not moved by her. Have you defended your weaknesses as virtues? The modern world claims strength is cruelty. Boundaries are abusive. Self-affirmation is emotional repression. Deep down, these are lies designed to keep you dependent. A man who needs no approval cannot be controlled. Are you ready to be that uncontrollable man? The man who asserts himself has dismantled these lies. He knows the hard truth. Peace without power is submission. Compassion without clarity is weakness. Love without respect is a slow suicide of the soul. Knowing this, he refuses emotional games. He doesn't argue with irrationality, explain his silence, or validate behavior that violates his integrity. He simply withdraws, silently, permanently. What happens when you withdraw? You provoke something few women have felt: the panic of losing access to a man who doesn't need her. Be honest, most relationships today are based on emotional leverage, not mutual respect. The man who rises, simply by his presence, disintegrates that power structure. She's used to winning by default. Now, she needs to win him over, not with beauty, tears, or temporary submission, but with truth and authenticity. Is she capable? She's not used to being evaluated. She's used to being chased, admired, crowned without proving her worth. She's used to men who fold, offer loyalty untested, trade standards for a smile. But the man who values himself doesn't offer the throne. He doesn't praise what he doesn't respect. This truth destabilizes her. He seeks not a savior, but someone who has saved herself, who has cultivated her own will to power. Remember Nietzsche: what is done out of love always takes place beyond good and evil. The man who rises loves, yes, but not under society's conditions, not by the rules she expects. He loves without submission, distortion, or sacrificing his essence. This love is more dangerous than any rejection, as it invites her to be more than she is. Many men diminish themselves for a woman's trust. The man who asserts himself remains tall, challenging her to rise. That's why she trembles. Most men crave access, but this man guards it. He guards his time, values, direction, and crucially, his emotional world. Not from fear, but reverence for his autonomy. His emotions are earned, not extracted. His intimacy is a privilege, not a reward. He isn't distant. He is emotionally sovereign and disciplined. Have you encountered such masculinity? It doesn't beg, impress, or perform. It simply exists with unshakable strength, expecting alignment with its truth or withdrawal. As Nietzsche said, "You have your way, I have my way." As for the right way, the correct way, and the only way, it does not exist. This is how the man who rises lives. He seeks authenticity, not perfection. And being authentic, he cannot be bought, not by beauty, flattery, or manipulative promises of love. He sees the truth she hides, troll disguised as vulnerability, tests as affection, chaos as passion. He confronts her, not with words, but with refusal to participate. He doesn't engage, reward, or bend. He's not there to satisfy her nervous system. He's there to protect and affirm his own. This is what sets him apart, while other men adjust. For her approval, he adjusts to his mission, his purpose, his will. And she perceives, often unspoken, that she isn't his universe's center. His purpose is if she can't align, she'll be left behind. Not maliciously, but with unshakable precision. This is the emotional earthquake. Not his anger or dominance, but his consistency, unshakable identity, refusal to hesitate under pressure. She throws everything at him. Withdrawal, drama, silence, seduction. He still doesn't yield. Because he's decided who he will be, and no woman will rewrite his definition. This shakes her. Not because he's cruel, but because he's complete in himself. The most terrifying mirror for a woman is a man who sees her clearly and doesn't flinch. Every fantasy, social cue, every move that worked on other men dies in his presence. Manipulation fails, performance crumbles, the mask falls. First time, she faces an unbearable question. What do I offer a man who cannot be seduced, who doesn't seek validation? She expected adoration for her beauty, but he values behavior. She expected him to chase, but he doesn't chase what doesn't move gracefully toward him. She expected to be the relationship's gravity, but realizes he orbits only his own truth, his own path, his own will to power. Nietzsche wrote, "The individual has always had to struggle not to be oppressed by the tribe. If you try it, you will often be alone. But no price is too high to pay for the privilege of owning yourself." This is precisely what she feels. A man who owns himself. She has no power over him, not because he's closed, but because he's resolved in his will. He doesn't need her to affirm who he is. His masculinity doesn't waver at her disapproval. He can love her fully, but will never beg for love back. He will never bargain his identity for her affection. In this stance, he becomes what most women never truly experienced, emotionally present, yet psychologically untouchable. This forces her to confront herself. Now she must ask, can I meet this man's standard without games? Can I stand in my own truth without tactics? Can I give without expecting to rule? Most cannot. They've been surrounded by men who crumble under tension, confuse affection with self-erasure, offer their crown for comfort. But the man who rises doesn't trade. He offers. If his offer isn't respected, he withdraws it with finality. Number, explanations, negotiations, or prolonged drama. He doesn't warn, doesn't threaten. He simply disappears, leaving her with her untested self. Nietzsche warned that life's greatest danger isn't pain, but comfort that numbs you to mediocrity. The man who rises doesn't bring comfort, he brings pressure. Not by shouting, but by existing with emotional clarity and internal structure that exposes falsehood. She feels it. The silent pressure of being with someone who doesn't need her to feel powerful, doesn't ask permission to stand tall, doesn't flatter her fears or inflate her ego just to keep her. This man is a reckoning, a philosophical confrontation, a walking storm of honesty that says, become who you truly are, create yourself, or walk away. He makes no ultimatums, sets no traps. He simply holds his structure, and the world either aligns or breaks against it. The man who rises doesn't change rules, he reveals them. He reveals most love isn't love. It's power disguised as affection. Most relationships aren't built on truth, but on implicit threats. If you don't make me feel what I want, I'll withdraw. That's the real contract, signed silently with your pride as currency. But the man who asserts himself burns that contract. He doesn't accept love with a leash, bow to moods, or bargain for respect. He chose something greater than affection, himself, his own affirmation. This choice, Nietzsche called the beginning of all true morality. You can't call yourself free if your peace is bought with approval. You can't call yourself strong if your standards crumble at silence. You can't call yourself a man if you need emotional supervision. The man who rises has seen it all. Women crying for control, affection as bait, sex as a weapon, silence as a trigger. None of it works anymore. He's seen through the game of life. Nietzsche wrote, "He who fights with monsters should look to it that he himself does not become a monster. And if you gaze long enough into an abyss, the abyss will gaze back into you." The man who rises did just that. He faced the black hole of emotional dependence. He confronted the version of himself who once begged, squirmed, bent, and bled for a love that was never true. And he killed that version, unceremoniously, without regrets. He doesn't hate her. He simply evolved beyond her control. Now she sees. He doesn't flinch when she's angry, panic when distant, or dance at her tantrums. He simply remains. Not cold, not cruel, just centered in his will. This unshakable presence shakes her to the core, because it tells her, silently, I'm not here for your chaos. I'm here for truth. Match it, or I withdraw. She's no longer the room's gravity, the prize, the puppet master pulling strings of guilt and desire. She's simply one soul before another. For the first time, her tricks fail. Now she has two choices: elevate and create herself, or retreat. Nietzsche would call this self-overcoming, the moment she must abandon manipulation and walk through the fire of truth, to stand beside a man who no longer bends. Few do, because truth is expensive, and most prefer control to risking their identity. This is why men who rise are feared, not for cruelty, but because they force transformation or departure. No middle ground, no half-love. Most men seek acceptance, or understanding, selling kindness, loyalty, patience, charm to buy a seat at a table never set for them. But the man who asserts isn't selling. He isn't waiting to be chosen. He isn't adjusting his value. He is the table, the creator of the feast. He doesn't chase, he summons. Not out of arrogance, but alignment with his essence. His life isn't a resume of qualities. He doesn't beg, impress, or perform. He simply exists with strength and expects her to present herself correctly or leave. He doesn't try to be perfect, he tries to be true. And because he is true, He cannot be bought. Not by beauty, flattery, or manipulative promises of love. He sees her hidden truth, control, disguised as vulnerability, tests as affection, chaos as passion. He confronts her, not with words, but with refusal. He doesn't engage, reward, or bend. He's not here to please her nervous system. He's here to protect and affirm his own. This is what differentiates him. While other men calibrate by her approval, he calibrates by his mission, his purpose, his will. She perceives, often unspoken, that she isn't his universe's center. His purpose is, if she can't align, she'll be left behind. Not maliciously, but with unshakable precision. This is the emotional earthquake. Not his anger or dominance, but his consistency, unshakable identity, refusal to hesitate under pressure. She throws everything at him. Withdrawal, drama, silence, seduction. He still doesn't yield, because he's decided what man he will be, and no woman will rewrite his definition. This shakes her, not because he's cruel, but because he's complete in himself, a self-creator. The most terrifying mirror for a woman is a man who sees her clearly and doesn't flinch. Every fantasy, social cue, every move that worked on dozens of men dies in his presence. Manipulation fails, performance crumbles, the mask falls. For the first time, she's confronted with an unbearable question. What do I offer a man who cannot be seduced, who doesn't seek validation? She expected adoration for her beauty, but he values behavior. She expected him to chase, but he doesn't chase what doesn't move with grace toward him. She expected to be the relationship's gravity, but realizes he orbits nothing but his own truth, his own path, his own will to power. Are you ready to be that man? The one who doesn't trade his soul for comfort. The path is solitary, but the reward is your own sovereignty, your own creation. Decide what to protect. Your peace, your rhythm, your voice, your sacred masculine clarity. In the end, there are only two types of women. The one who respects your values and builds with you, and the one who bends your values and slowly breaks you. The first requires patience, leadership, and clarity. The second only requires you to remain weak. If you were waiting for a sign, this is it. If you doubted your ability to be the man who doesn't betray his own order, be that man. And if this message cut through your soul like a blade of truth, share it. Somewhere, another man sleeps beside the same storm you just escaped. Share, subscribe if you believe this message must reach more men. Thank you.